Morning. Good afternoon. My name is Vincent Berardi. Live in Fairport, New York, USA. And today I'd like to put forth some documentation that I had gathered and which I had sent to various political leaders in the late 1989 and early 1990 time frame. Sent unto a huge list of reform groups, politicians, Supreme Court, presidents, Congress, religious groups, etc., etc. Now, in recent days, I've forward posted on Facebook some documentation that other witnesses have posted alleging various sexual crimes amidst a huge hordes of people in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party going back over many years. Some of them were convicted, some of them even gained office later, were reelected time and time again. And some people think that that's just Satan speaking. That's the accuser of the brethren just blowing smoke at the true believers. Well, I challenge every citizen of the United States of America and even the citizens abroad to do the research. You see, in that documentation that I sent in 1989 and early 1990 and all through of 1990, I posted 10 different of these packages calling for sexual reform of laws promoting and protecting sexual licentiousness. They were starting to expand their laws for sexual licentiousness. Example, in this one here, you see a date of USA Today in February 09, 1990. It says, Senate okays collection of hate crime data. Now, on the surface, that might sound okay, hate crimes motivated because of a person's race or religion or ethnic origins. But you need to understand that in that time frame, as a prophet of God, I was confronting immorality run rampant across our political leaders in the United States of America. They had just started putting this sexual orientation clause into some sort of rulings or decrees by kings, executive orders, that type of thing. So you see, that was way back in 1990, February 1990 that was happening. And people say, well, my gosh, we couldn't have had dozens of political leaders in both parties, child molesters and perverts and judges. That's not possible. Well, I'm sorry. Check the newspaper reports. It says at the top in yellow, dated approximately July 1st, 1989, out of various newspaper reports. Washington Rutgers newspaper report. And it says, credit card payoff show government links, says paper. A homosexual scandal in Washington has highlighted a world where sex is charged as a business expense. Lobbyists act as pimps, and prostitutes get $150 a session more for extras. The scandal still unfolding involves male prostitutes and clients from the Washington power elite who use credit cards to pay for sex and often charge the fees to their employers, including the government. There it is, in black and white. Look at the newspaper reports back in that time frame in 1989, 1990. Look at them. In at least one case, a Defense Department credit card paid for homosexual acts, according to the Washington Times newspaper, which broke the scandal Thursday in a detailed front-page story. Government officials confirmed the gist of the report. It was the latest in a long series of events that raised doubts over the ethical values of the men who hold the levels of power in Washington. 1989, 1990, remember? Right after the President Clinton's impeachment trial, where these guys essentially laughed it out of office. We're all guilty of these crimes ourselves, so we can't convict him. We can't impeach him, reprimand him, because many of them were guilty of these same crimes themselves. Remember that? And you say, oh, I'm blowing smoke. There's no cases like that. Well, here's one. April 6th, 1990. USA Today. Right there. USA Today. Dated. Time date stamped. Go look at it yourself. It says the second front page. Credit card sting. Socks it to escort services. A 2-year sting operation against money laundering practices of pricey escort services has netted $2.5 million in 18 cities across the USA. Authorities unveiled the operation Thursday, a day after seizing financial records of 50 high-price escort services. There it is, black and white. USA Today, time date stamped. April 6, 1990, page 3A. Customers of the services include federal lawmakers, well-known athletes, and clergymen, said Steve Cole of the Tampa Police Department, which headed the sting. Cole wouldn't name names, though. You know, these slippery politicians are real slick. They operate by stealth. They operate by secrecy. And sometimes even outright bribery. Giving people, here's a little extra money for that job. Or here's this position of high-ranking power. Pays better than the last one. That's how they operate. That's how they continue to operate. You think, read it yourself. Go to the newspaper. Read it yourself. USA Today, page 3A. April 6, 1990. Read it yourself. I challenged 1,000 people across the USA to find that article and post it on Facebook. I challenge you. Says these services were charging up to $1,000 a night. He said one guy charged $19,000 worth in a 2-day period. Federal indictments are expected against the services for income tax evasion, racketeering, and money laundering. Internal Revenue Service investigator, blah, 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 said the sting netted 25,000 credit slips worth $2.5 million. It goes on and on and on and on. But you get the sum and gist. So when I forward posted those 3 or 4 listings, overview of these sexual perverts, these convicted or charged or judges, congressmen, senate, on all levels of government, I wasn't blowing smoke. I had seen it back then. I had documented. In public packets sent to high-ranking all 3 forms of government, even the people. This was sent out to them. How did they respond? Well, yes, I must applaud that some of these people responded very well. Now, you got to understand, in the 1986 to 1990 time frame, there was a concern about the quality of schooling, public school report, education, and public school, sex education, a report. Was it good for the kids? Was it promoting them to engage in sex before marriage? Blah, 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 blah. A great debate ensued on that. A rather in-depth report. And there were some organizations that had gotten my words. Heritage Foundation, 1990, October. Citizens Survey to Reform Congress, October 1990. Again, this is 26 years ago. A lot of you guys, you're not old enough to remember this, but they did happen 26 years ago. Public to Citizen, by an organization by Ralph Nader, the founder, 1990. Says our civics class, we learned that our Constitution guarantees a government of the people. What they didn't tell us is that more and more our government is is a government of the people who have money, who operate by stealth, who operate by secrecy, who operate sometimes outright bribery to keep their secret sins hidden. You see, civics class, our republic, goes into explaining the role of a republic form of government. There's an executor. To summarize, the Constitution of the United States and of many other countries who copied our format provides for an executive, a legislation body, which defines the qualifications and powers. It requires them to appoint a judiciary, a set of judges, and to recognize certain inherent individual rights. And it defines the powers of the judiciary and enumerates the individual rights. Now, this one here is a nice little chart. Nice little chart, and it shows 4 little circles all connected, intertwined. And what that is really saying, it's showing you checks and balances between all 4 levels. And when they properly work, then you know, when the people stick up for their rights, are vocal enough for their rights, long enough, persistent enough, then ultimately there can be some checks and balances when the other 3 levels of branches run amok. When the sexually immoral and the God rejectors and the perverts run their offices and make laws, unjust laws governing our families, you know, one of the most recent ones, people who had sex change operations can use your public facilities with your daughter or with your boys, whether it's public facilities in a store, whether it's public facilities in restrooms, whether it's public facilities taking a shower at a public school. These perverts, these sexual orientation people have said, well, these people have the same rights as everyone else. If someone thinks they're a transgender male, they can shower with the females and vice versa. That's essentially what they're saying. In those forms, those laws, those roots of those laws stem back to 1989 and 1990 when I was boldly confronting, God was using my voice, my pen, to boldly confront these sins. Call for reform boldly before we enter a calamitous war. Gave them a choice of how do they want to demonstrate repentance. And in that time frame, sometimes secret decisions were made that ultimately led to war, that ultimately would lead to devastating consequences. And some things were made, I believe, decisions were made September 7th and September 8th, 1990. That ultimately was one of these types of examples. That in fact, people made decisions. You know, government, some people in government said, well, you know, Bush should have the authority to go to war if he wants to. I mean, that's one example. I don't know when that was made, but I did see an article dated October 1990 relating to that. I do know and have documented earlier that Bush gave the order before the end of 1990, December 29th, 1990, and he said if Saddam didn't leave by January 17th, go to war, start this war, so forth. Again, the first fist on this maypole, 28 nations fighting this war in one location. Well, when that war was on TV, God had showed me there was going to be a moderate flurry of activity at some point in time. Another war was going to be. And then even later on, there'd be another war with a mad flurry of activity all around. That destruction and the death that you see on Iraq and that first war in January 17, 1990 for the next so many days, that's going to be, you're going to see that all around. Those were the warnings. And you see back in October 10th, 1990, this one guy, I don't know if you're old enough to remember him, Jack Gargan, he posted big ads in multiple newspapers across the country. And he had a list of approximately 100 newspapers. He asked for donations to support this. And he said, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. See his sourpuss face? I commend this guy. He was bold. He wasn't going to let these people want to go to hell. They can go to hell. He's going to post this and he's going to declare the truth. And he did this. Why? Why did he make such a thing? He did it at the top because he realized if this government continued with these immoral people and these sex offenders with unsound judgment and thinking, that they would eventually more and more debt, 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 and someday the whole house of cards is going to fall. So at the top in little fine print, he says, this is for, he names his children, his 3 children, Evan, Eric, and Lindsley. I love you, Granddaddy. And for your grandchildren and future grandchildren too. That's why he did it. You know, why did he do that? He said his full-page ad. Petersburg Times, Tulsa World, Denver Post, San Diego Union, Tribune, Richmond News Leader, Richmond Times Dispatch, Portland, Maine, blah, 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 and 98 others. I have 12 more targeted over the next 60 days. With some of these ads costing up to $60,000 each. Now that was back in 1990. I'm sure they cost more now. I need all the support I can. Please help me. So that was throw the hypocritical rascals out of office. But yet, regretfully, even amidst the few groups that really push for reform, regretfully, all of those past efforts failed. Why? Because the politicians in office operate by 3 main tactics. And as long as those tactics scare people from speaking up, scare people from letting their light shine before all the world, then the evil will get more and more evil and perverse, and the light will be squashed. You won't see it. What are the 3 scare tactics? Stealth, secrecy, 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 secrecy. Deception, they deceive people. They misquote Bible truths. Oh, that's just Satan, the accuser of the brethren, speaking. When you're confronting immorality run rampant among your leaders, it's just Satan accusing the brethren. I suppose if you're one of those brethren doing the same thing as we're confronting, you might say that. But for most people, they don't think of those people as your brethren, at least God-fearing people of many religions around the world. So arise, O people, arise, O people, shed forth your light, shed forth your light, proclaim, send in your hundreds of dollars to these organizations that will rise up and will confront these God rejectors. Send in your money so that these newspaper reports back in 1989 and 1990 will be once again blasted before American newspapers to remember that at that time sex stings in Washington, that was commonplace. At the same time, those in office were, well, you can't discriminate because of my sexual orientation. Just because I have male or female prostitutes come to my house or my hotel, I have the right to have government pay for it. That's what they were doing. Check it out. God bless. Bye.